Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Alan Nathan Show, joined right now by Bob Weiner, Democrat strategist, columnist, and the only person who's been spokesman for both the House Narcotics Committee and the White House Drug Policy Office under Drug Czars Lee Brown and Four-Star General Barry McCaffrey. Bob, thanks for being here today. How are you?
It's a pleasure, Joseph, the star sometimes host.
Thank you. Flattery will get you everywhere. So we're just picking up here where we left off Thursday. Listeners, just to bring you up to speed, we were talking about Attorney General Biden's Attorney General nominee, Merrick Garland's policy as far as marijuana decriminalization would go. And the words that we came out of the show with, I believe, were deprioritize enforcement of low-level pot offenses. Does that mean decriminalization? It really sounds like it, because pot offenses are kind of already low level and unenforced, especially with low priority enforcement, I should say, especially when you regard everything else that police are going after.
Well, that's about right. You've interpreted it, as they say in the Rachel Maddow show. You got that spot on, Joseph. Okay, so what it really means is they'll go after the dealers, but not the users.
Oh, well, that's simple enough. So, with the dealers targeted more, then, will the dealers be targeted more, I should say, or does that just mean they won't go after users, but dealers will be targeted at the same rate?
Yeah, in states where there is legalization, it sounds like the feds are not going to jump in to users, but dealers, and the reason for the dealers is they never are just dealing pot. They're always dealing the other drugs, whether it's cocaine or methamphetamine or other opiates and designer drugs. They're always dealing the more serious ones, and that's where it takes you.
Now we also talked last week about the international situation, as far as growing opioids in Afghanistan, and I see you're covering how the interim Biden-Blinken Taliban peace deal that does not seem to cover opium.
Well, that's a real issue. It's the front page of the Post, and it's everywhere. And it's U.S. calls for Kabul and Taliban to share rule. An interim plan proposed as possible troop departure from Afghanistan looms. So I did a Control F on Karen DeYoung's story, and I know Karen from the Post, and I Control F'd drugs, heroin, opium, nothing, not a word in the story, not a word in the deal. And that's been true for years for U.S. policy in Afghanistan. It's ignore the drugs, which are the funding for the terrorism, which was the reason we went in there in the first place. That's how the Taliban gets the money. It's how the terrorists get the money. It's from the drug production, which makes Afghanistan the number one producer and distributor of opium and heroin in the world, and its neighbor, Pakistan, number 3. So it's a twofer between the two of them, and it goes back and forth across the border. And so when Hillary was Secretary of State, I wrote her a note, because I've got a relationship with Hillary from in the White House, and it's a very good relationship. She joked about when I was subpoenaed by Ken Starr, Bob, if we had this picture when you were subpoenaed, it would have been proof. It's ridiculous what Ken Starr did, and so I stood on the courthouse steps and said it was Big Brother at its worst. But at any rate, so and I wrote to her and I said, you've got to go after the funding of the Taliban and the funding in Afghanistan. If you put a block and a freeze on the money, you will also freeze their ability to fund the terror, and that's exactly what she did a week later. So that's the policy that should be the case, but it has not been since. And it's a wrong policy by the United States to ignore the word, and you go into the thing and do your Control F. You don't find heroin, you don't find opium, you don't find drug.
Now, has there? It's absent from the peace deal, but is there any sign that anyone in D.C. is concerned, Congress or anyone in the White House staff or in Biden's cabinet?
No, our policy has always been to get Afghanistan off the shelf. Just get rid of it. We don't want it as a policy problem for us. So great. So we ignore the fact that they're the number one supplier of the most dangerous and biggest funding of terrorism drugs in the world. And so we'll continue to have these terrorists by whatever name, by the way. If you don't call it Al-Qaeda, you call it something else. and it's Hamas, and they talk to each other and they work with each other and all of that. So it's a disastrous policy, and it's one which I'm writing an op-ed on right now because I think it's a mistaken policy, and it's a head-in-the-sand policy. And, Joseph, I call it like it is, regardless of party. I mean, obviously, so to our listeners, I will disclose that I am a Democrat, whatever that means, right? But it also means that I was the spokesman for the White House Drug Policy Office and the House Narcotics Committee, as you said, for 6 years each, under drug czars Barry McCaffrey. And when Biden formed the drug czar in the Senate, I was the communications director in the House for Rangel, who did it in the House. We created the drug czar. So this is an issue which I probably lean much further right than most of my party, but nonetheless, it's a reality that you cannot ignore the drug war abroad and expect to stop funding of terror, and at home you cannot legalize drugs and expect that your car crashes and your hospitalizations and your deaths are going to stay as low. There's a 30, as you documented yourself in the last show, there's over a 30% increase in those things in the states that have legalized, when the Post said, first of all, that there was no evidence. Well, there is. The studies are out. The Journal of the American Medical Association, Stanford study, went into the states, again, did this mysterious search of Google for states legalized result and harm, and the results come up in a study. When the White House couldn't find it, I did, and that's why the Post ran my piece on the 30% increase.
Now, this just came into my head while we were talking here, so pardon me if you don't have an answer or if it just sounds crazy, but is the opioid funding that the terrorists are getting, the Taliban and all that, is any of that going to Syrian rebels? I mean, because Biden's out over there dropping bombs on them. I mean, is this not dealing with the problem in Afghanistan possibly fueling what's going on in Syria?
Well, I would just say that the bad guys have linkages and money everywhere, but I have not researched that, and it's it's a thread, Joseph. It's a thread to terrorism and people who want to disrupt America everywhere in every which way they can. And so are diamonds in South Africa. I mean, that's another one that's black market stuff. So that kind of thing is very likely true, but I'm not going to go that route because I want to go with where there's direct evidence, and the direct evidence is last figure I heard was the $400 billion a year in drug money from drug money laundering, and so those numbers exist, and that's what gives you the terrorism money.
Okay, I didn't know if you had heard anything about a connection with Syria. It just occurred to me that we're treating the symptoms of the problem, but not the actual cause of it. Dropping bombs in Syria, going into Afghanistan, getting the peace deal between the Taliban, but not addressing why the Taliban and groups like them exist in the first place, and and how they're getting funded.
Well, I don't disagree with you, but again, I'm not going to speak to, I like to be fact-based, and I like to stay with where I know what I'm talking about, and what I just said to you is something I actually know about, and I don't know where Syria gets its money for the bombs.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to hit that carefully. Now, the COVID relief bill, that's also son whiplash. Talk about whiplash right here.
Yeah, it's going to happen
COVID
tomorrow.
relief bill.
It's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought it was today.
The votes are there in the House. It'll have there's at least a 5-vote margin, maybe a 9-vote margin, somewhere between 5 and 9. It'll pass by, and it will be the law of the land. And the people who say that, it's just a giveaway for all kinds of good causes, well, we've been knocked on our rears for the last year because of this virus. And the economy and our health care and our housing and our food programs have all been knocked on their rear. So because we're at 6% unemployment now, and by the way, we were under 4 before, so we've still got like a giant leap to go to restore the economy to where it was, and we're still at least 10 to 20 million jobs short of where we were, and people aren't looking for jobs anymore, and by the way, our economy could be in some kind of a chaos because people don't even want to go to work. They love staying home, but that's a whole separate issue. So I think the COVID bill is going to be extremely helpful to the nation's economy. Janet Yellen, loves it. The current Fed chair loves it. They all say don't worry about going too big and that inflation is low as it is now, so it's not going to hurt us. That's a false claim. And by the way, don't even go there, Republicans, when you did the same amount of money, $2 trillion for nothing but tax breaks for the wealthy. And Manchin's compromise on the next set of bills on infrastructure and reforming health care and making sure the money is there is those giant, so that we don't have that inflation, this is going to hurt Republicans, is let's reverse those tax cuts for the very rich and the corporate.
All right, Weiner, thank you. We'll have you stick around for the next segment as well, and thank you for speaking comfort to us on the COVID relief bill. All right, listeners, stick around too. We got more to come on the Alan Nathan Show here on the Main Street Radio Network. Yep, just a little bit more to come. I know the hour's almost done, but we're not done at all.